Coming up on today's show, we're going to round out the latest Broncos head coaching news and rumors as Denver has completed 2 interviews so far with the Michigan Wolverines head coach Jim Harbaugh and someone in their own backyard. Plus, we're going to talk about Sean Payton. What's the latest buzz with the former New Orleans Saints head coach? So all that and more coming up on today's Broncos Breakdown. I am your host, Matthew Peterson, and let's check out the candidates so far for the vacant Denver Broncos head coaching gig. Denver has completed an interview, a virtual one albeit, with Jim Harbaugh from Michigan. They also completed an interview with Evero. We'll talk about that towards the end of the show. Sean Payton on the list, Dan Quinn, kind of gaining some buzz right now, right? Harbaugh and Payton, they're going to cost maybe $20 or more million. Would you have to do that for Quinn? Probably not. So maybe he'd be a sneaky good value right there. Raheem Morris, I just want to give this a quick plug right now. We're always talking about previous head coaching experience. Raheem Morris does have that. He was that super duper young head coach with the Bucks and Josh Freeman, if you remember, a decade or so ago. And then DeMeco Ryans, the DC for the San Francisco 49ers, kind of the young buck on there along with Evero. So let's jump into it though. Let's start with Harbaugh, right? The biggest name right now in Mile High. As Zach Stevens tweeted out that the Broncos have completed a virtual interview with Jim Harbaugh on Monday. It lasted over 2 hours, according to Tom Pelissero. Tom Pelissero hopped on Good Morning Football, America Football, whatever it's called, and he talked about, hey, what happened here in the interview, and it was virtual, busy schedules for both sides there, couldn't get one in person. Now, the way I look at it is Harbaugh, and I'll expand on this, is probably the front runner in my opinion. Now, some believe that he is the favorite, and by some, I kind of mean Vegas. Right now, Vegas says there's better odds that he will be the Denver Broncos head coach next year and not even Michigan football, who he is currently under contract with. Now, he has a possible staff in mind with Vic Fangio, so similar to Sean Payton, which could be a bit messy given that, well, we know the history between Fangio and the Broncos. And then what about this? What about offensive coordinator Greg Roman? So that's currently the OC in Baltimore with his brother John. And the Ravens, if you know a Raven fan, talk to them about Greg Roman. He's not a bad OC, but I think they're just looking for a change. And the Ravens sort of poached the Michigan defensive coordinator last year, so Mike McDonald. So these two brothers don't mind exchanging coordinators here. My question is Harbaugh going to turn down $20+ million? Because that's what Denver's most likely going to offer here. And in my opinion, unless Harbaugh just completely bombed the interview, I think it's his job for the taking. I think the Broncos probably want to get this done a little bit sooner now. The January 17th deadline, a week from today, it's not going to be a deal breaker. They didn't hire Hackett until February last year. So I don't think that's actually going to be weighed into the decision here. But to me, it seems like Harbaugh's number one on their list. Harbaugh wants to come back to the NFL. $20 million can be very persuasive. What more do we have to say here? There's that, plus an anonymous source, a Harbaugh associate, said this. He will flat go to Denver. What does that even mean, by the way? Anyway, he is not thinking about any of that stuff. He will just go take it, in my opinion. He thought he was going to get the Vikings job last year, and it didn't happen. So we've got an anonymous source coming from The Athletic saying he will flat go to Denver, whatever flat go to Denver means here. You parlay that with this. The wonderful NCAA has levied multiple level 2 violations against Michigan. Remember, Pete Carroll, when he was with USC, he kind of dined and dashed. He went up to the Pacific Northwest, and what happened? A lot of big sanctions came for the Trojans right after Pete Carroll left, shortly after Pete Carroll left. So maybe Harbaugh is looking at his situation here going, I beat Ohio State twice. I made the CFP twice. Georgia, they are playing with juggernauts. It's not even a fair game right now. Even if I make it to the Natty next year, like last year in the semis, I'm not getting past Georgia. They're playing a whole different game right now, right? We're playing checkers. They're playing Risk, and they have all the cannons. So I'm looking at $20 million from the Broncos. Russell Wilson played decently well the last month, believe it or not. I'm in. Let's pack our bags and let's, leave Ann Arbor and go to Denver here. Also, if Harbaugh didn't want to go to the NFL, if he wanted to stay in Michigan, which, hey, there's good reason to, right? It's his alma mater. He's finally gaining traction. He's gotten this team the most wins in a season in Michigan football history, the most winningest football program in all of USA. Well, wouldn't he just say, I'm not leaving Michigan? Sorry, but no thanks. Like, bark up a different tree? No. He left the door intentionally a smidge open. Look what he said in a statement just last week. While no one knows what the future holds, I expect that I will be enthusiastically coaching Michigan in 2023. AKA, unless someone offers me 20 plus million, I'll stay in Michigan. And the Broncos, they're going to be that team, I believe, here. So barring a major change of heart where Harbaugh decides, I want to finish what I started and I'm not leaving Ann Arbor until we get a national championship back in Michigan, I think he's the next Denver Broncos head coach. I don't think you have to overthink this one. There's mutual interest on both sides. The Broncos want a proven CEO caliber head coach. Greg Penner said that in his press conference on December 26th. What does Harbaugh want to be? A CEO head coach. He wants control. That's why he didn't get the Vikings job last year. They didn't want to give him all that power. Denver's looking for someone for that kind of role. And then you kind of just stick in the middle, $20 million a year. Yeah, Harbaugh says, you want me to sign in black, blue, pink, green ink, whatever you want. I'm your man. Now, here is the pinned comment for today's show, and I'm very curious what your answers will be to this question. With Harbaugh as head coach, the Broncos will go blank in 2023. What record will Denver have with Jim Harbaugh as the head coach? I think I'm going to go in the neighborhood of 10-7. I don't want to bite off more than I can chew. We're talking about a 5-win team this year. Double the wins for Harbaugh. That seems very doable, especially with how they played under Rosberg. Seems like any good coach could get a couple more wins out of this team compared to Hackett. So put me down for 10-7. Let me know what record you think Denver goes in 2023 with Harbaugh as the head coach potentially. Now, next up on the show, we're going to kind of shift gears and talk about the man down in the Big Easy. That is Sean Payton. So the latest kind of buzz on the former New Orleans Saints head coach and what's going on between the Broncos and Sean Payton as we got some kind of new crumbles and nuggets from this story. We're not going to get a whole lot until they're able to do an interview, and we'll kind of get to that in just a second. But first things first, we are so close to reaching 11,500 subscribers here at the channel. We're less than 100 away. We had a big push yesterday. Appreciate all the very warm happy birthday wishes in the comments section. It's not my birthday anymore, so I don't have much ground to stand on. But if you do want free Broncos content all off season long, subscribe to the best Broncos YouTube channel out there. Let's talk about Sean Payton now. So the Broncos have received permission from the Saints to interview Payton. That's not like very groundbreaking new information. That's like a couple days old here, but in case you've been living under a rock. Now, Denver cannot interview him until January 17th. Don't ask me why. I looked all over the World Wide Web. I can't figure out why that date it is, but it is what it is here. I think it might be something to do with Wild Card Weekend. Anywho, both teams, and this is very important here, both teams are on the same page in terms of trade compensation. Sean Payton, who is on the Fox, NFL Fox crew in the morning, was talking about, it's happened before. Not a whole lot, but it's happened before. A decent amount of history of coaches getting traded. John Gruden, Bruce Arians. There's a handful of coaches who have been traded around, and the compensation varies. John Gruden went for a whole lot. Bruce Arians went for a bag of footballs. So it ranges. Now, here's the important thing. The Saints are not looking for a bag of footballs. They don't have a first-round pick this year. Remember, last year they moved up to get Trevor Penning or Chris Olave, one of the two, with the Eagles, and they gave up their future first. So for that reason, they want a first-round pick back because they need a first-round pick. They missed the playoffs. Missing the playoffs and not having a first, that's a really tough setback. So with that in mind, let's turn our attention now to Ian Rappaport, who tweeted this out. The Broncos and Saints have held discussions centered around Sean Payton, and while no deal is in place, the two sides appear to be on the same page about what the compensation would be for a deal. So Denver is going into this going, we know what it costs to get Sean Payton. We know you're not going to just give him up for nothing because he's under contract there for the next 2 seasons. So with that in mind, we're willing to engage in talks that we know will result in probably a first rounder going to the Saints. We've got more news to get to in just a moment, but today's show is brought to you by BetUS. Check them out. Go to chatsports.com/bet. Now, when you do, use promo code Broncos125, and that will unlock a 125% deposit bonus. Of course, there's no more Broncos football to bet on here, but we do have Wild Card Weekend to bet on, and I'm sinking my teeth into this matchup. I like Dallas minus 2.5. I know the Cowboys are playoff frauds, and the Bucs, Tom Brady, I get it. I know it. But the Bucs suck. They are just bad. They are lucky to be in a bad division this year. And for that reason, I'm going to ride with the boys. Give me the Cowboys minus 2.5. I think it's a very easy line. If Dallas wins, they're going to blow the doors off the Bucs, and we're all going to go, why did we not bet this earlier? Of course they were going to win. They've been much better than Tampa Bay this season. Let's turn our attention, though, back to Sean Payton. Remember I was talking about the whole draft and having to give a first-round pick? Well, the Broncos do have a first-round pick via Miami, via San Francisco, so we are all rooting for the Seahawks. We are all rooting for the Seahawks this Saturday. So yeah, Saturday first game, because if they lose that, then it's going to be a much better pick for the Broncos. So with that in mind, they know what it's going to take. And I'm guessing New Orleans may have started with a first so that it falls to a second. But the Broncos don't even have a second rounder to give up. They do have their second round pick next year, so maybe New Orleans would entertain that. But my guess is it's probably going to cost a first rounder. Maybe it's a future second and this year's third or something to make it a little bit easier. But I think that's a big factor right there. Now, speaking of Sean Payton, and speaking of the Cowboys, actually, let's look at the current NFL head coach openings. It was kind of a happy Black Monday. There were not a whole lot of firings that took place. Like the Broncos midseason fire, the Colts midseason fire, the Texans, the Panthers midseason fire. The Texans fired him on Sunday, Lovie Smith. How dare he win a game when they're trying to tank? Only the Cardinals fired anyone on Black Monday. So with that in mind, Sean Payton is maybe sitting around going, if the Cowboys have a one-and-done playoff experience, like last year, and the Chargers, who I think Brandon Staley is safe, because he did make the postseason. But if the Chargers go one and done in the playoffs, well, then this list grows to 7. And Sean Payton, he'll jump all over that Cowboys job, right? He's got the ties to Dallas. He's got the ties to the organization. Apparently, he's been like, you-know-whatting the Chargers job too. So if those teams win, that's probably going to kill the idea of that job opening up and Sean Payton going there. I don't see the Chargers firing their coach after winning a playoff game. Same goes for Dallas. Now, another thing that's important to remember is we see the Cardinals on the list. And I've heard a lot of talk and a lot of buzz of Sean Payton. He's going to go to Arizona before he's going to go to Denver, right? Kyler Murray, better quarterback, younger, much better situation. A top 10 draft pick compared to Denver. I get that. That's all true. That's all fair. But is that really what Sean Payton is looking for when he's picking a team? I mean, his own words are, no. Look what Sean Payton said here. This was on Fox NFL Morning. I think that's really about the triangular relationship. Ownership, front office, and coach. I think ownership and the functionality of the front office is most important. Now, maybe he's just giving a political answer and kind of beating around the bush. But to me, he's saying the truth here of, I'm looking for a good ownership. And that's in Denver, more so than Arizona. So let me come to this here. Do the Broncos want to part ways with a first-round pick for Sean Payton? I've kind of come to a realization of there is no way in hell that a 26th, 27th, 28th, whatever overall pick, a late first-round pick, is going to be the thing that holds up a trade for Sean Payton. If the Broncos want to get Sean Payton, they're not going to go, but we can't afford to move on from this 29th overall pick. No. Late first-round picks are not guarantees. What is a guarantee? Sean Payton's a really good coach. So I know that the idea of moving on from a first-rounder when the Broncos desperately need it can be a tough pill to swallow, but a head coach is going to be a lot more impactful than maybe that first-round pick hitting. It's not even a guarantee. Go look at any draft go back at least 2 years because, 2021, 2022 is too recent. Go back to 2020, 19, 18, 17. and look at picks 26 to 32 and ask yourself and look at them and say, or 19 to 32. Are any of these players starting? Because if not, I'm sure they'd rather have Sean Payton. So with that, I want to ask this question, though. Pick a head coach. Is it Harbaugh or is it Payton? I'm going to keep asking this question because I'm going to continue to not change my mind, but sort of change the ammunition for my argument. And I'm leaning towards Harbaugh, not because of the first-round pick element, which used to be a factor, but now I'm thinking, to hell to the end of a first-round pick. Like, if the Broncos want a coach, they're not going to let the 28th overall pick hold them up. But I think Harbaugh is just a better coach. So for that reason, I'm going to go with Jimmy. Now, some other interviews to get on here. Like I mentioned at the top of the show, Denver did conduct a lengthy in-person interview this morning with their own DC, Ejiro Evero. Now, Evero's also getting some buzz from the Colts and the Texans. Now, quick kind of like put this in the back of your brain here. If Evero gets hired to be a head coach for another team, Denver will get 2 third-round comp picks. So the Broncos are definitely interested in sort of boosting Evero's name because they don't want to lose Evero, but they also wouldn't mind getting a pair of third-round comp picks, which they really, really need. So just kind of keep that in the back of your head here. Dan Quinn, they have requested to interview. I am sure they will interview with him after this week. Right now, he's definitely preparing for this first-round matchup, and if they lose, which the Bucs win, I'm going to be in financial issues. But if the Cowboys lose, Quinn will do another interview. If the Cowboys win, maybe he does a midweek interview. That does happen. They do have time. But if not, it might have to be for another week. 49ers, DC, DeMeco Ryans. They are also same kind of boat as Dan Quinn, waiting for their playoff to end so they can start knocking out some of these interviews. And then we've got the Rams defensive coordinator, Raheem Morris. Now, I bring up Raheem Morris because they are looking for a coach with head coaching experience. And Raheem Morris, while it was a very bad head coaching experience down in Tampa Bay, he does have that. Right? He's got the ability to go, I know what didn't work last time. I know what I did wrong. I know what I can do better at. And that's what they want. Same goes for Dan Quinn. Same goes for Morris. That's why I don't think Ryans is probably going to be a deep contender because they're not going to go back to back to back 3 or 4. I can't even keep track at this point. First-time head coaches. I appreciate everyone for making us a part of your day. If you haven't subscribed yet, please go ahead and do so. We'll keep you guys kind of in the know, up to date, and up to speed on the latest Broncos head coaching news and rumors.